All right, let's go to the Chief Financial Officer's report. Tim?
And Mary Ann uploaded a revised monthly financial report. It's on page 6 of the packet. We received today a school and campus safety grant agreement. We had applied for this grant a couple of months ago. I think we discussed at one of the board meetings. We applied for $36,000. We were only awarded $11,000. That money is going to be used to update the entrances of both door A and door G. We'll be putting in new doors there and also a new window at door A where people come in, and we'll check in with the security person there. A copy of the agreement is also added into board book, and there's a copy in the signature folder for Matt to sign. We have to sign this and get it back to the Illinois Emergency Management Agency, and then we can proceed in July on this. The $11,000 is added into both our revenues and our expenditures on the budget. So we just wanted to update you on that, and let you know that that was in the packet. The financials for the month of May, the operating revenue for the 11 months was 105%, not 153% that was originally noted in my report to you. The biggest reason that we're over budget as much as we are is because as we've talked about this, is because of the tax refunds. We really haven't had tax refunds this year. The budget in the operating funds was $750,000. We've had $14,000 in refunds. So there's a significant amount of money there, and we'll discuss that a little bit later when we talk about the budget. The operating expenditures for the month, or the total expenditures for the month, were $1,676,726. We're at 87% of budget on expenditures through the first 11 months. And the operating fund balances at the end of May were $20,092,657. There was a question regarding the bond and interest levy. The amount that was...
Page, Tim.
I'm sorry, this is not, it was page 14. It's...
The original package was 14.
In the original packet, it was 14. I'm not sure exactly what page, but
How many pages were added in?
You're looking for the
19
revenue?
starts the
Page
bills.
25, if you're looking for revenue.
No, he's looking at the statement of revenues. Page 7 of the statement of revenue document.
So is that
Yeah, which is
25 now?
Page 25 on our,
Bond and interest current, bond and
Right.
interest
What's
levy
25?
prior,
yeah,
25.
okay. There was a question there regarding why the amount that we've realized is significantly lower than what we had budgeted. The budgeted amount of $2,868,000 was set at an amount that was too high. We were reducing the bond and interest payments over the past couple of years because of the working cash funds that were being paid off. That budget amount should have been less than it was. It just simply was an incorrect budget amount.
And that one, they collect whatever the actual amount of the debt is, right?
Yes,
Or what we owe on the debt.
yes, yeah. And they take the amount that we're gonna have to pay and they add 5% to that for that loss factor. There was a question in the expenditures. I'm gonna have to find these pages. Yeah.
Just add 11, I think, 11 pages.
Okay, this will be on page 32 then. The expenditures that we have for health insurance as well as for dental insurance. Oh, no, this one was substitutes, I'm sorry. There was a comment regarding the fact that we're about $32,000 under budget on our substitute expenditures.
You got a good job on that.
On page 33, are the expenditures for the health and the dental insurance. We're running somewhat over budget in this report. I think I've mentioned this before. We take all of the expenditures for health insurance, for dental insurance, we put it into one account during the course of the year. At the end of the year, we have to transfer out part of that money into special education and part of it into the superintendent's accounts. So at the end of June, you'll see that we transferred $270,000 out of the general health insurance account into special education and 25,000 into the superintendent's account. And we did similar transfers in the dental account. Both of these accounts on page 32 will then come under budget. And there was a question regarding, on page 36, the medical expenditures were budgeted at $270,000 for the special education, and obviously there's no expenditures there, but that amount will be transferred in during the month of June. There was a question on page 52 about temporary salaries. These temporary salaries, we budgeted $60,000, we've spent $72,000. That's age group gymnastics. We're over budget there, but we're also significantly over budget on the revenue side. That's a program, as we've talked about, just continues to grow every year. So usually we're outpacing our budget on revenue and expenditures.
Are we better off in the new budget labeling that instead of temp salaries? Or maybe temp salaries, age group, or,
I'm going to go in and
just
try
something
and
to
change
put an
some of these
identifier?
descriptions and make them more descriptive so that people can understand more what they are. And the final question that I had was with the activity accounts. There's one of the accounts, which was cheerleaders, was highlighted that it has a negative balance. There's a number of other accounts, primarily in the sports area, plus the class of 2016, that show negative amounts. In the past, we haven't loaned money into those accounts to bring their balances to even, so we aren't paying back loans. In the case of the sports activity accounts, those are generally items where we're spending the money on different items, but we've already been told by the boosters, or when we did the Ford fundraiser, that the money's going to come into that. In the case of the class of 2016, that's the activity account that handles the prom. So we have expenditures as we go along here that we're paying for next year's prom, but obviously we don't have any revenue coming in. So that account's negative right now, and it's going to continue to grow negative until we start selling prom tickets next spring.
You know, again, I was using a simple proposition in my mind that if they're overdrawn, we had to have lent them money, because how else they can't spend more than they have, right? So I'm trying to understand under the policy on activity funds, it says any loans have to be repaid. So if, and again, cheerleaders just happen to be first. You know, I'm not picking on the cheerleaders. They just happen to be first on the list here. So they're $3,000 overdrawn, and if they spent the money out of there, you had to have lent it to them. So if the policy says they have to lend it, I'm trying to figure out how do we meet the policy and get reimbursed if some of these activity funds or the groups are spending more than they're taking in.
If we were going to repay loans at the end of the year, we would have to be making loans during the course of the year from other accounts into those ones that go negative.
But
who
how
paid
did they
the
get?
3,000?
Who paid the
Pardon?
3,000?
I think that's what he's asking is,
How'd they get overdrawn by 3,000? They can't
Where's the
actually
money
do
come
that,
from?
can they?
if the PO went in and they didn't have the 3,000 in their account.
But if we know that, for example, in some of these sports activity accounts, that the boosters have said, we'll pay for that, you know, get us a bill and we'll pay for it, well, then we have to pay for it up front. Then we get reimbursed by the boosters.
Okay, Tim, you have an account called 0208, credit card account. Whose money is that?
It's a district.
It's a district. So initially, early on, the district put money into these activity accounts. Is that the account you're lending from?
We're not really lending from a particular account, it's just.
Well, I mean, in the
bet we
case
have-
of the scenario here where the cheerleaders didn't have the money in there and now they're 4,000 negative, is that the account that, would that account be 34,000, not 30,000?
If we loan money out of it, yes.
Yeah.
And we've
Well,
said.
where's that money coming from? It's that general pool of $240,000.
Right.
But in there is the one account that's not earmarked for anything, is it? Is that account earmarked for something, the credit card account?
No,
earmarked?
that money eventually goes into the board accounts. as
But it's
revenue.
not earmarked for anyone, so that could be, is that the one that's being used to loan these various activity?
See,
You can
can't-
look at it that way,
you're-
but I don't,
but
you
you're not
know,
borrowing.
the question is,
So the question is, can you borrow from the scholarship activity account for the puppets?
you're not borrowing from any
Yeah, here-
account to cover
here's
these
the- here's
expenses.
But you are.
You're just saying that overall, we're gonna have,
I know,
you know,
you have zero,
okay.
you had $0 in every other account. Every other account, and all you had was the
Mhm.
credit card account and the puppets account. You can't really
Right.
take from the scholarship or from from Special Olympics and lend them into the puppets or to the cheerleaders, can you?
You could make a loan, yes, the board would have to approve a loan, we'd have to say we want to loan money from.
Well, here's the difference in
into
the
puppets.
semantics. Where we're difference. You're answering the question as if without us approving a loan and showing it on here, there wasn't a loan.
Correct.
I'm asking the question on a practical basis. If there's a credit balance, he explained, somebody paid a bill for the cheerleaders that they didn't have money for. Whether it was because the boosters were gonna pay back or they didn't collect enough, and it's still negative, which means they, somewhere along the line, they were loaned money, whether we show it on here or not. Otherwise, how could they have paid for something and gone
So
negative?
did the 3,000 come out of impress? Did the 3,000, that's what we need to, I think that's what they're asking. What bucket, what fund, what account did the 3,000 come out?
It's not coming out of anything, I don't know how to, when
So-
you have,
so let
when
me
you have
ask-
activity accounts and
so
you
let me
have
ask
over
you,
200,000.
The credit card account, you start off with $30,000,
Mhm.
all right? And now you have 800 in there, saying that there's that's all expenditures related to the credit card.
I mean, I guess it, you know, the balance in the overall balance is $371,000. So there's money in any number of accounts, obviously, that covers those negative balances. We've said in the past, we aren't gonna make loans to cover the negative balances.
So the check is coming out of the general checking account where the 300, all the money from the activity
Coming
funds
out
of the
of it,
city.
it's being, it's
I
covered.
guess the question is, we have separate checking accounts, individual checking accounts for each of these individual funds. You wouldn't be able to write that check.
Correct.
So that
Correct.
For the
Correct.
puppets, you would not be able to write the check for the
Correct.
cheerleaders.
So
You'd have
although,
to hold off and wait for them
Money
to
come in,
fund.
right.
and I can see where the confusion comes from.
No, it's not, you are loaning money.
Yes, you're loaning
Right.
money.
You are loaning money between.
You are 100%.
So in this case, there's only $300 left in our general one. So what basically is happening is either Wellness is lending the money, or or Rouser is lending the money. Whoever's got a big enough balance out there,
Right.
is lending the money to those guys.
Well, I
Right,
think there's
and-
two things. One is the policy, it is a loan, whether you're showing a loan or having us approved, because that's the only way you can pay if there's a deficit. So the thing there twofold. One is under the policy, it says we have to pay it back. And maybe there's a way we're doing it different or something. But more significantly is, how do we get, for some of these groups where there's negative balance, how do we assure that they actually pay the funds back to the school? How do we make sure that that happens?
In the sports cases, we have commitments from the Boosters Club.
Okay.
We have the Ford fundraiser, and we know how much we're gonna raise with
And
that.
presumably the class of 2016 or whatever it is
Yes.
continue to raise funds all next
So
year.
this year, a good example, to answer your question, this year, when we got near the end towards the prom, and we were chasing about 50 or 100 tickets, we ended up selling more than we needed, but there was a point where we were thought that we were not gonna have enough prom tickets sold to cover the cost of the prom that we already paid for.
Okay.
So then that's where, when Tim closed some of those accounts and put them in the general activity accounts, Mr. Passarella was told that that's how he's gonna have to make up the negative balance
Okay.
from some of those accounts that closed from no activity for over a year.
Okay.
So I get where the board is confused, because the accounting system is to keep track of the individual clubs and activities accounts, but the money sits in one lump sum in one account in the bank. So you're right, we're kind of borrowing against each other, even though we're not officially saying Rouser is going to loan it to a specific class. We're borrowing against the house.
But you're also borrowing for the future classes now, aren't you? Cheerleaders left a year with a negative $2,900. Is this prior year's cheerleader group going to fund the $2,900, or is the future cheerleaders going to fund the $2,900?
Or the booster's gonna pay
Or the
this.
boosters pay the $2,900 and it gets
We'll write a check.
deposited to the bank. Right.
So that's $2,900 that the prior cheerleaders left in debt for the future cheerleaders, unless they had an agreement
Yeah, I
with
think,
Booster.
I wouldn't say prior, I think that's a bad example, because the cheerleaders cover freshmen through seniors. So I would say like a class of 2014, if they had a negative balance, that would be leaving some type of debt for future classes.
Okay.
I could see your interpretation of that.
So Art, I want to ask Art one question. So Art, when you have like negative balances on sports accounts, how does that handle?
To answer specifically the cheerleading question, and with all the sports, if there was zero money in there and I would go to boosters and ask for a purchase, a specific amount, like that exact amount, they would approve it, but then we would buy it, that's in the negative, and then I would come in with a check. So I still need to come in with a check for the cheerleaders, so it is covered. The only account that is not done that way is the 6901, which is athletics, and that is off of like the fourth fundraiser or tournaments we run, things like that I know what will come in, so sometimes we'll have to pay some bills prior to that coming in. But as far as any of the, whether it's girls golf or whatever, we go in with a specific amount, that account will go in the negative, that specific amount, and then I'll come back, usually a month later, 2 months later, with a check from boosters for that specific item that was bought. So that account will be back to zero once we finalize it with the boosters for that amount.
Thank you.
Mr. Passarella, what do you do on negative accounts that are non-sports?
The only negative account for a non-sport is the class of.
In RBTV.
Sure. You didn't make him go.
RBTV is small.
I'm serious.
What did you say?
Are you the new guy on there? Call him the new guy. You got a dog, you live.
So what do you do on that situation?
That's the situation with 2016 with prom.
No, 2016's been explained, but isn't it another negative account?
No,
RBTV is slightly negative.
no, there's no negative accounts with activities I oversee. It's just, it's not that, they don't, it's not created that way. You know, they're doing different things. Those are clubs.
Okay.
But the prom, it necessitates a loan because the venue requires a deposit prior to the purchasing of selling of tickets. And so, just so you know, also, those students incur the costs, you know, even of the bus, so we make sure we're in the black. And this year we actually sold more. It was a great venue.
Okay, so Tim, let's do this. On those that we have boosters coming in to pick up the payment, that should maybe highlight it, waiting for checks.
Let's report back in July on who hit,
Yeah.
on how we're getting those accounts to positive.
Good.
Okay?
Anything else, Tim?
No, that was all.
Any questions for Tim?